MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role-playing game. What makes WoW a role-playing game? Story, PvE, leveling, hanging about in Goldshire Inn on Moonguard. All of the above, maybe. Blizzard, over the years, have self-sabotaged World of Warcraft as an MMORPG, whether RPG elements have been watered down, made irrelevant, or just straight up removed. Battle for Azeroth is a culmination of many years of decisions being made to facilitate accessibility over exclusivity, and through that effort, many things which make an RPG what it is have been worn away. I believe there are some key points which we'll find in any MMORPG which really define what the game genre is all about, and these are what I believe they are. Most importantly, character power gain. Watching your character go from a lowly peasant to a mighty warrior, be it through abilities, gear, talents, etc. Power gain is a big old carrot on a stick. It's something to drive you forwards. How many classes can you think of nowadays that have a core rotation of 3 to 4 buttons, many of which are picked up by the early levels? Now think of having to complete 120 levels like this, with a talent every 15 levels thrown in. Beast Mastery Hunters learn near their whole rotation by level 20, all warrior specializations by level 28, Shadow Priest by level 24. There's just so little to look forwards to. You're giving so much power early, followed by nothing really that's essential while leveling, but literally dozens of levels. The power game for your character ends so early into the leveling process. We used to have the big end of talent tree abilities which define the spec, which are now given upon choosing a specialization at level 10, like Mortal Strike, Shadow Form, or even Penance. And then eventually you get to Legion, building up your artifact weapon and legendaries throughout the duration of the expansion, which give you a number of new active and passive abilities, and then suddenly you reach BFA and bam, it's gone and replaced with nothing. You're going up in level and down in power. It's so fundamentally backwards, it's hard to believe this was the decision that was deemed the best. And eventually you reach 120 level cap. So the Azeroth armor system has been a bit of a train wreck the whole way through. Even Blizzard have essentially made it so it can more or less be ignored and pointed us in the direction of their essences instead. On top of this, the standard gearing happens in such a short space of time. There's no real moment to build up any anticipation or excitement towards receiving something new. And I'm just going to throw in my 2 cents on the whole titanforging thing, that I don't think it's really great. It's been discussed to death now. I don't really want to talk about it too much. It's better than it was in Legion for sure, but whilst it exists, there's no best in slot gear really, apart from Azeroth of course. There's just luck, and that doesn't feel great. We should have a system with a high-end content awards the highest level gear possible, and if you are in favour in titanforging, fair enough. The maximum it should be is, for example, 5 item levels below the gear from high-end content like Mythic Raiding, so there is a degree of exclusivity for people taking on the game's most challenging content. Which brings me to my next MMORPG hallmark that has been eroded over time. Player exclusivity, standing out, being a special snowflake. It matters, it really does. For me, there are 3 key things that make your character stand out: your appearance, your mount, and your title. Let's start with appearance. Transmog killed it. End of story. Now, there's really not much more to say. Honestly, Transmog was a fantastic idea. To this day, it's breathing life into old content. People can go back and complete their favourite tier set. You can obsess over a collection log. It allows you to create unique combinations and themed outfits. Notice how many MMOs have dyes for their armour. World of Warcraft has Transmog. It adds a level of character customization within the game that otherwise wouldn't exist. So, what's the problem here? Answer this. When was the last time you changed your transmog? You may swap between 2 or 3 different ones, but you've got your favourites, right? You pick your favourite one and then you look like that forever. You don't know what somebody is actually wearing beneath the transmog. You don't know if someone has gear from the new raid, or whether it's just the millionth paladin deciding to rock the judgment set, which, you know, I can't blame them for, to be honest. Almost everyone looks great, and even when you do obtain new gear, it's a deviation from your transmog, so you're gonna hop straight on your yak and change it right back. It must be very demotivating for those in charge of gear art and creation How much is Blizzard really going to allocate towards something that so few players want to show off? Before transmog, people were in a ragtag set of whatever was best for them at the time. The few people in tier sets or matching armor stood out. They were unique. It showed what could be achieved and served as a motivator for people to try and reach that level as well. That's what the appearance can do for a player. And just as a side note, please bring tier sets back. It was a bad decision. Number 2, your mount. First, I think we have to disregard the fact that mount acquisition has become cheap and easy these days. It's been that way for such a long time, I don't think we can even look back. And obviously it costs less gold, you got them at earlier levels. Okay, fine. But mounts are becoming extremely numerous, more a gold sink than anything else at present. There's a lot of reusing skeletons for in-game mounts, whilst store mounts sometimes receive unique models. Despite this, there are definitely some rare mounts that carry a badge of prestige among fanatical collectors that wouldn't mean anything to someone who isn't super invested. Sometimes literally. In mount collection, it's like having someone you know who goes to the gym who feels the need to tell everyone what he does in minute detail, but the only people who would care are those as equally invested in going to the gym. You can tell people you have a plagued proto-drake and they will nod and smile, or you could tell them you have invincible and they'll look at themselves and think, damn, I wish I had that, man. In 8.2, Blizzard have introduced the ability for your mount to walk on water. Any mount, in fact, meaning you won't be on your Pond Strider the whole time anymore. You'll be on your Sky Golem instead. Problem solved. The biggest shame with mounts is the exclusive ones are often from the in-game shop, whilst the live game receives a mass of expensive recolors. The mount system is moving more to empty the pockets of avid collectors, be it in real life or in-game. There are still some cool mounts from rewards, for sure, not contesting that at all. The Mythic mount from Jaina looks amazing. Raptor from King's Rest, that looks really good. Bruce from the Brawlers Guild, good again. It just feels a bit tainted by the sort of money-grabbing tactics that are going on at the moment. And point number 3, your title. They're a bit like mounts, there's so many of them. Obviously they don't stand out too well either, which is fine, it's how they should be. They're not meant to be this insane thing, well, apart from the insane obviously, but they tend to just be a byproduct of completing difficult content that should allow your appearance to be unique in other ways, and they're fine as they are, really. When was the last time you were midway through doing something and just dropped everything and thought, I've got to inspect that guy, you know, that he looks amazing? I can't think of the last time I did it personally, which is the issue with appearance at the moment. Moving on. An MMO should have engaging end game content for the solo and the group player. So Endgame is where the game begins for many people. This is where content really divides itself down the middle into 2 parts. You have collection and challenge. Now, if you want to log in and go for collectibles, achievements, etc., that's cool, no problem with that. The same as if your idea of endgame is Mystic Plus or raiding. The issue comes when you try and go from one to the other, especially from collection to challenge. There's no path from solo to group player, and at no point during the leveling process is the importance of taking advantage of your character's entire spellbook made clear. More work should be put on into early level player learning, reinforce the ability to interrupt, to dispel, stun, CC, etc. early. In Warlords of Draenor, the proving grounds was this to a very low degree, but this comes after potentially dozens of hours habitually not engaging with these abilities, which is why it's easy for some and a real struggle for others. Learning, similar to real life, is easier the earlier you start. The LFG tool, whilst leveling, offers a nice bit of variation. Do some quests, hop in a dungeon, it's good. But come level cap, it's useless in terms of finding an organised group. It doesn't even tell you what specialisation someone's playing, it just says tank, it just says mage. If you're trying to form a competitive group, you need to know which spec they're playing. It's so basic. The only number given is the item level, and when world quests can give the same level gear as a raid, you can guess how well that'll work out. Raider.io, a third-party website, is essentially doing Blizzard's job for them with the LFG, and if you don't know about it, well, you're only going to get invited to content you considerably overgear. And guess what happens when you overgear content considerably? You don't need to interrupt, you don't need to dispel, to stun, to CC, and the people at the bottom end remain there. On top of this, you know what's one of the worst design decisions in BFA? Not doing major class changes during patches because it will confuse people. This might just be me, but I always look forward to rebalancing during patches. It made me want to level up new classes and get some gear for them. Well, What's there to be confused about anyways? With all the class pruning gone on, there's less depth to most classes than a kiddie's paddling pool. Blizzard might have well have just said if your spec is bad now, it's going to be bad until 9.0, which is just pathetic, really. I mean, they flip-flopped from saying that certain classes weren't ready on release of BFA to saying they'll be fixed at 8.1, and now they're saying they're just not going to do any major class changes for the remainder of BFA. They're just all over the place. And I'm not expecting perfect class balance either, but a reshuffle in the top tier specs keeps the game a bit more fresh in my opinion. At the same time, a lot of people just aren't interested in grouping or taking on a challenge. What's the point after all? You don't raid for the appearances you can gain. Trinkets have not been great throughout the duration of Battle for Azeroth. What's left? The title? Amount that one person can receive at the end of a mythic raid? The raids are only there for a challenge, and generally speaking, people don't want a challenge, but they do want the reward from it. Think back to Brawlers Guild and Mists of Pandaria. Remember fights like Mingus Diggs, Ahuru, Hexos? That was a good one. It was a challenge. The Battle for Azeroth version of the Brawlers Guild was tuned to such a low level, it was just embarrassing. It felt like it was designed for someone who had hit level cap a week or two ago, and it was months into the expansion. The Mage Tower was an excellent bit of content with unique artifact appearances. Brawlers Guild and Mage Tower are great examples of challenge content done right. Each could be beat with gear in time, which is absolutely fine. That's the way it should be, in fact. The challenge crowd get their part when it first comes out, and then the collectors sometime later. Everyone wins. It's perfect. There should be more incentives, competitively itemized gear, trinkets, unique appearances like the Mists of Pandaria challenge modes, customizations for your class and specialization like Green Flame for Warlocks. What if monks could unlock a crane theme for their attacks with a different attack stance and orange/red particle effects on their abilities, or if Blood Elf Paladins could do a quest to make their spell effects have a red tint to them. They are even referenced as Blood Knights in the game, and I think the more Blizzard leans on the artistic teams, the better. Which leads me on to my next point, which you should have in an MMO, telling a story, the world, the music, the atmosphere you get from logging into the game. What is an MMO without a story after all? For me, the zones in Battle for Azeroth, the music, have all been top tier. In fact, I can't honestly think of a time where I've thought I can't stand going into this zone or actively disliked the music in the game. It's been one of the areas that's never really been a letdown for me. Overall, the world has consistently been fantastic, and there isn't enough criticism to warrant nitpicking over certain zones historically for me. The art and music's team tend to really be the carries for World of Warcraft. Story-wise, there's a lot going on at the moment. I keep seeing things where people saying the writing's gotten bad over time, but then again, I'm not a film critic like many people seem to be these days. The war campaign feels like Azeroth's take on Suramar, and there's no illusion about which one of those two I prefer. So, looking at 8.2 and beyond, 8.2's just dropped, and prior to its launch, it was being described as the patch designed to save Battle for Azeroth, which I guess is true if you enjoy the Timeless Isle content format. I don't mind it personally, so I think it's okay so far. We'll see how Mechagon and the raid is though. A more important thing came just before the patch though. Blizzard recognising they'd overdone class pruning, being more focused on reducing button count and restricting spells than creating engaging rotations and unique utility. Battle for Azeroth will be Battle for Azeroth, and for any major changes, I think they basically said we're going to have to look to 9.0 and the next expansion for that. I'm not under any impression World of Warcraft is going anywhere soon, and I'm looking forward to hearing about BlizzCon and the direction of the new expansion and any changes that I'm praying they have learned from BFA. And at the end of the day, I do still play retail and enjoy it, and basically you don't spend this long coming up with criticism because you hate something. You do it because you care about it and you want it to be better. Any thoughts? Let me know. Thank you all so much for listening to this ramble if you managed to. Take care guys. Cheers. Bye.